What's going on, everybody? Welcome to JohnnyVTV Live here on this Wednesday, December 14th. I got my boy Joey Cows. It's been a little bit since we did a show together, so I got to welcome him in here, and we got to get through week 15. We got a lot of games on the slate, as well as talking some futures markets. Let's bring him in here, Mr. Joe Calabrese. How we doing, kid?
We're doing great, pal. Appreciate it. And as you can see, even though the Lightning are the second team now that my cousins moved to Florida, I always got to rep the Tampa shirt whenever I'm on with you because, we love that area.
Dude, I got to be honest. I'm starting to hate him because every other word that comes out of his mouth is like, oh, I'm from Tampa. Like, hey, man, how's things? How's business? Oh, good, bro. I moved to Tampa. So it's like, what are you talking about? And by the way, he lives in St. Pete. He doesn't live in Tampa. Like, that's like saying
but he works in Tampa, so he's 5 days a week in Tampa.
That's almost like saying, oh, I live in New York City, but you live on Long Island. Like,
I kind of agree a little bit.
I like St. Pete. I think St. Pete's awesome. I used to work in St. Pete. I would go out in St. Pete. First Fridays are my thing. But it's not Tampa. It's different. And, some people do prefer St. Pete over Tampa. I think it's actually kind of a little bit of a rivalry. I feel like the people that live in St. Pete think they're like so adult and they're so professional and grown up because they kind of look down upon Tampa. I mean, but either way, man, I like that whole area. So I think you really can't go wrong. But anyway, man, what's going on with you? How's everything?
We're good. I'm not liking the cold a little bit. Dipped a little too much too quickly for my liking, but we got a really nice fall. It's a little brisk outside, going back and forth now, back to the apartment and home. So, we'll make the most of it, right?
Fall. What fall?
There's no fall anymore. It's winter
28
now.
degrees. Fall doesn't exist. Fall is like a brief 6-week period, like spring. It's basically summer, just a slight little bit of fall. Winter for like 5 months, and then a slight little bit of spring back to summer. That's how it is up here. So, I'm not really liking this. I kind of wish I lived in Florida again because this is just completely messing with my entire mojo. But we got things to talk about here, Mr. Calabrese. Let's start it off before we get into some games. Who are you taking in the MVP market? Is it going to be Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, or the field?
Well, based on what I've seen the last couple of weeks, you got the two favorites down pat, but the field is a very tasty play because I'm a big fan of what Joe Burrow has done the last month of the season, and he's got some really nifty wins thrown in there. And I think that game 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs, I think that was the game that firmly put the Bengals back where they were supposed to be. They're tied for atop the AFC North. The Ravens are hurting, dealing with a lot of injuries. The Bengals right now are playing like a team, especially if Jamar Chase stays healthy and he's on the field and they are clicking. That team could win the AFC North. And if they win the AFC North, and they probably won't get the number 1 seed, but if they can win the AFC North and if they can win 12 games, you're going to see a lot of late money, I think, go on Burrow. So I actually think he's had a more impressive season than Mahomes. But I don't think he's the favorite in the MVP race right now.
Everybody wants to talk about Jalen Hurts. I love Jalen Hurts. He's had an unbelievable year. I've had him in a fantasy league. I've won some money on him. Don't get me wrong. But the thing is this. Statistically, he's so far behind Mahomes in certain regards. Mahomes might realistically beat Peyton Manning's single-season yards record of 54-77.
With a supporting cast that's probably not as good as it was last year. I mean, you lose Tyreek Hill, but they're still talented. Don't get me wrong.
Well, not only that, right? So he could have that amount of yards, 43 passing touchdowns. That's his pace right now. And he's got a very favorable final 4 games of the season that's possible. That's number 1. Number 2, you look at a guy like Mahomes who, like you said, had Tyreek Hill. Now he doesn't. His best receiver is Juju Smith-Schuster. I was like, oh, he's got Kelsey. Yeah, well, Kelsey's a tight end. I'm talking about actual wide receiver. And even Kelsey's been kind of held in check the last few weeks. So he's not going to have a guy that's probably even going to have 700 rushing yards. Like Hurts is going to have a 1,000-yard rusher, Miles Sanders. He already eclipsed. His defense isn't good. He plays in a much tougher conference. He's had the harder schedule. And I like Jalen Hurts a lot, but at the end of the day here, if you add up all his rushing and passing, it's still not going to be better than Mahomes. It's just not. The Eagles have had the easiest schedule in football. So my lean, and there's still enough time to go around, but my lean still would be Patrick Mahomes. I think people want to give it to somebody else perhaps, but it's more about the system in place for Philadelphia. Like Jalen Hurts, as good as he's played this year and as much maturity and growth as he showed from last season, at the end of the day here, a lot of it is predicated on the system. He's not asked to do too much. A lot of the times, like the team is so good, the defense is so good, they're playing in the second half with like 20-point leads. So it's just run the ball.
Yeah, to make that quick point on Kelsey, his value has been finding the end zone. He's got 12 touchdowns, right? So he gives Mahomes that definitive target where it seems like he's scoring a touchdown or two every week. Yeah, that multi-touchdown game against the Chargers, right? So, again, you could see, like, the impact that he's having. And you're right. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, like, he was like a cast-off number one. He's not really a true number one receiver. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, right? Kadarius Toney. Their running backs this year, they don't really have a definitive number one. So you can make a case for Mahomes too. Andy Reid is kind of used to having more of a thrown together kind of like a potpourri of just like skill guys surrounding his quarterback. This year is more like some of the Andy Reid teams that we saw in his like days of Philadelphia when he had Donovan McNabb and they just couldn't break through. That's what this reminds me of here.
Yeah, I mean, the rosters for Kansas City have been much more complete, much more, it's been a lot tighter. I do think here, just based on a lot of the reasons I said, that's why I will give Mahomes the nod. The one bad thing that really, really soured people this past week was the 3 picks to Denver. Now, he goes from 8 interceptions, which is fine, to 11. And it's like, if he starts creeping up towards like the 15 range, and it's enough of a reason for some people to say, let's give it to Hurts. He's got 22 touchdowns to 3 picks. And, the one thing is, he's got 10 rushing touchdowns. He's got 7 of those 10 touchdowns from inside the 5-yard line. QB sneaks, the read options. Like, you're like, oh, well, what does it matter? It still counts. Like, I get it, but I'm just saying it's not that impressive. It's like, it's a stat pattern to make himself look good. And, it would ultimately be Mahomes. And I think there's a shot that Buffalo might stumble. And if Kansas City wins out and Buffalo stumbles to Cincinnati, Kansas City going to be the 1 seed? 13 wins?
It's very possible.
Yeah, exactly. Or 14 as a 1 seed in the AFC, by far the tougher conference, played a much tougher schedule with better stats. I mean, it's probably a coin flip at this point. I think Josh Allen's a little bit of a dark horse here, but I just don't think he's going to have the numbers. There's a very narrow path for a guy like Josh Allen at 20-1. So I would think it's between the Hurts and Mahomes. Mahomes, to me, is going to end up being the guy as long as there's not a ton of people saying like, oh, well, we're sick of Mahomes. Let's give it to Hurts.
The Bills' final 4 games, the Dolphins on Saturday at the Bears, which seems like will be their a definitive win, right? And then their final 2 games are against the Bengals and the Patriots, right? So it's like with the way the Patriots have been playing the last couple of weeks, realistically, Buffalo could go 2-2, right? And if the Chiefs went out, they're the 1 seed.
I think the Chiefs
I'm just saying it's not an easy 4 games. Outside of the Bears game, the other 3 are
but the
kind
game
of
you're
hard right
circling, the game you're circling is the Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati Bengals in prime time. You need, if you're rocking the Chiefs, you need the Bengals to beat the Bills, and then you need the Chiefs to win out. That way Kansas City gets the 1 seed. Mahomes has almost 5,500 passing yards, over 40 touchdowns.
Your MVP market is riding on that game, because if the Bengals beat the Bills, realistically, now you can make a case where you could put Burrow right there and give him the nod, right? But if the Bills win that game,
I don't think so.
Probably,
I don't think so because I don't think so because Joe Burrow is not going to have the numbers that Mahomes has. So like, there's no, you see a guy like Hurts and you see a guy like Josh Allen this year. The X factors they throw in are with their legs. Like a Mahomes he's not a running quarterback. He's mobile. He can run when he needs to be, but he's not a guy that's going to sit there and get 15 carries in a game like Allen or Hurts would. Joe Burrow's a pure passing guy. Like, sure, he'll take off every now and then, but he's not a running quarterback. So, when you compare the passing stats, the touchdowns, the yards, the passer rating, all that stuff, he's going to have to beat out Mahomes. I just don't think he does. Like, the only shot is if Burrow finishes with about 5K, over 40 touchdowns, and the Bengals somehow finesse the 1 seed. That's the only possible path I could see. If the Bengals don't get the 1 seed, he doesn't have a chance. So that's pretty much what you're betting on. And, Cincinnati's got to beat Tampa Bay this week, a game we're going to get into. They got to beat Buffalo. They got to beat the Ravens. They have a schedule that it's not easy.
Right. Their schedule's not easier either.
So you're going with the field, preferably Joe Burrow, you think is going to find a way?
Yeah, I think there's value in the field. I do.
Okay. I'm going Mahomes.
And I still think some people are going to want to see what Josh Allen does this final month. So it's like, it's still sneaky, but like I said, I just think there's value. I don't disagree with you though. Mahomes, I could see why you're your guy, right?
Well, I have money invested in Mahomes, so I really would like him to win. I have Jalen Hurts instead of him getting MVP, Nick Sirianni, Coach of the Year for Philly. So let's move it on here, Joe. You went MVP. Now let's talk about Defensive Player of the Year. I'm interested here because I have a huge position on Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is my biggest single bet liability and highest. Well, I shouldn't say the best outcome in terms of financial return, but definitely the highest position, most vulnerable. Are you feeling Bosa or Micah Parsons? Parsons is now minus 250 across the board. Bosa is in the plus 160 range. Who do you think here?
I'm with you, but with the way the voters would likely think, like, I just feel like there's going to be some kind of Cowboys bias here, and they're not even the best team in that division, right? The Eagles have been the better team in the division the whole season, right? But Parsons looks like a little bit like the sexier player on the field, right? With the way they kind of use him a little bit. But with the injuries the Niners have dealt with, right, and then continue to fight through, if that team is able to just continue to roll through, and they're not going to get the number 1 seed in the NFC, right? But if they win 3 out of their final 4 games, or if they win all 4 of their final 4 games, right, and they do it with like Brock Purdy at quarterback and Deebo Samuel, maybe he misses a game or 2, right? We don't definitively know what that situation is going to. Oh, it's 3. It's going to be 3, right? Okay.
3-ish.
Yeah. So, we don't know. So, with the 49ers banged up, if they continue to roll, like, I'm with you and Bosa, but again, like the voters, I just feel like a lot of them are going to lean towards Parsons, even though I think Bosa has been the more impressive player.
Okay, so I kind of have I'm echoing the same feelings as you. The problem is, Michael Parsons, the star on the helmet, means everything. And, a lot of the preseason voting, the midseason voting, especially after TJ Watt went down, everybody already, penciled Parsons in for the Defensive Player of the Year. Some were even trying to give him an MVP nod. Listen, Micah Parsons is probably the most impressive and the best all-around defensive player, most important defensive player, aside from Aaron Donald. Once it's going to be probably Parsons, Aaron Donald, in the last 15 years, right? Now, Parsons has had a great year, no question about it. But, he's kind of not shown up on the stat sheet the last couple of weeks. Bosa has better numbers in a game and a half less. He's got more sacks. He's got more pressures, QB hits. He's got more tackles for loss. Every metric that is used to measure defensive players, because it's harder than measuring an offensive player. It really is, because a lot of the times defensive players, especially on the edge, you're measured by sacks. And if we go by true merit here, right now, merit says Nick Bosa. And then you just mentioned it. Say the Niners win the division. Brock Purdy is the quarterback. And Bosa has significant advantages in the stats department. I think Nick Bosa really has a shot here. He wasn't dead a few weeks ago, but he was kind of like, 9 toes in the grave. Like, Parsons hasn't been impressive. And the argument's going to be like, well, he plays linebacker, so he doesn't have as many snaps. Like, fine. That's true, but still, like, there's it's very difficult to quantify that, how it pertains to, like, overall success and how it translates to numbers for an award like this. I think it should be Nick Bosa, and I'm hoping he picks up 2 or 3 sacks on Thursday night, tomorrow night against Seattle, with Seattle winning, of course, because I have them to win the division. But, I think Nick Bosa is definitely alive here, and it's still a value bet at plus 160. So it's something I would grab if you haven't done it already. I think Parsons is – he's been a little bit quiet lately, and I'm just not sure that his stagnant performances is going to allow him to ride this out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, Bosa's having a chef kiss season. This is his best season since he's been a pro. And he had a really good rookie year, and he was pretty good last year. But this is his, like I said, his chef's kiss.
He's missed time, too. Like I said, he missed the game. He missed the Atlanta game.
He's so impressive. Like, the fact that this 49ers team is so well run, because think of all the defensive line talent that they've had come through there the last 3, 4, 5 years. The fact that they're able to turn one guy over and then a year or two later turn another guy over and then still be that dominant up front on that side of the ball, it's impressive.
It really is. It really is. That's why I'm hoping for it. It's going to be a nice Christmas if my boy Nicky Smaller Bear comes home with this Defensive Player of the Year. Got to stop just giving Micah Parsons all the shine, because he's a generational type player. He's a guy who plays for the Dallas Cowboys, and he does have pretty good stats. But let's do the right thing here. As of right now, I think it's Nick Bosa based on merit, and I think that's going to end up counting for something if Parsons stays on the quieter side as he had in the stat sheet, even though, it doesn't reflect what he means and what his value is to this defense and to this team. But Bosa manning the number 1 defense in the NFL right now with the 49ers, who are shorthanded, that has to count for something, especially if they finish as the 3 or even the 2 seed. So, Joe, let's dive into some games here, right? First one, I want to say Detroit Lions, now road favorites at the New York Jets. Over-under is 44.5. Do you think the Jets are going to be able to thwart the red-hot Lions?
I've never seen more love for a 6-7 team at this point in the season and the 20-plus years that I've watched football. But I understand the Lions team is very lovable. Everybody likes Dan Campbell, right? Jared Goff was like the cast-off number 1 pick who was involved in the Matthew Stafford trade, which as of right now looks pretty even, right? Stafford won a Super Bowl last year, but it seems like because of Stafford's injury and his unknown future right now, it seems like the Lions got exactly what they were looking for, right? Maybe they were looking for a little bit more than a stopgap, and I think Goff has had a relatively good season. I think he's looked very good. That said, my Jets are in a position to kind of stop all this, right? I told you a couple of weeks ago I needed to see a little bit more from Mike White. Now, the stats over the last couple of weeks against the Vikings and the Bills have not been sexy, but he has not played bad. He's played fairly well, even though hasn't really found the end zone. And he took a beating last week in Buffalo, right? So I think this matchup is going to be a little bit easier on him, right? I think the Jets will be able to move the ball both on the ground and through the air. I'll tell you what I like in this game. I like the over in this game. 44.5 seems a little low, considering that the Jets came out against the Vikings, very slow first half, got it going in the second half. Another slow first half last week, but they played a good team in the Bills, and they played in the rain, right? So if the conditions here are favorable, I think you're going to see 2 offenses going a little bit more up and down the field on Sunday. And that said, the Lions are 6-7, right? It's very hard for a 6-7 team. Like, how are we favored on the road, right? And I'm seeing like it's -1 here, minus a half a point here. It's a pick 'em here. But I think the Jets are the slightly better team. I think they have the slightly better defense. So I'm going to go with them to win the game outright. And sorry, guys. I mean, I know you love the Lions, and they're the lovable losers of this year, and the underdogs you want to get in and crash the playoff party. But I think the Jets are going to put a stop to that.
I'm in agreement here. I like Detroit. I haven't had many of these. You know what? I kind of forgot to say it in my write-up. I maybe get this once or twice a year. They were my bet the house. If you don't have a house, buy one, then go bet it. Lock. Mortal lock. If I had $1 million to bet, I would have bet $1 million last week that the Lions won. I was so confident that they were going to win that game. I literally had zero doubts about it. So, I'm glad they delivered for me there. Now, the thing is, I like watching Detroit play. I was confident in them. I wrote them up as a preseason playoff team. Dan Campbell was my coach of the year coming into the season. Aiden Hutchinson was my defensive rookie of the year. And, I had a lot of expectations for the Lions. So, the fact that they're favorites right now doesn't surprise me. But the thing is, they're noticeably very, very, very different on the road as they are at home. Aside from the records, they're about 12 and a half, 13-point game points worse on the road than they are at home. So the fact that they have to go into the outdoors, I don't think it bodes that well for them. They didn't run the ball particularly well. Jamal Williams isn't good. Like, he's not good. He gets all these touchdowns because, DeAndre Swift and everybody else does all the work in between the 20s, and he gets the goal line scores. I think he has nine of his touchdowns, or maybe actually 13 of his touchdowns, I think, for inside the 5-yard line this year. I have to recheck that number. But the point is, they're having a tough time running the ball. Dan Campbell refuses to get DeAndre Swift an active role in this offense, like maybe 10 touches a game. That's not enough. He's a guy who's more of a bell cow. Or if not a bell cow, he should be 15 to 20 touches between running and receiving. Jared Goff has not been the same guy on the road. I think with how bad this defense is, even though it's been playing much better the last few weeks, this is a spot where the Jets should be able to take advantage. Yes, the Lions have been controlling the ground game a lot better on defense. So, but I still think Bam Knight is in for a solid game. I think, Garrett Wilson should find some success. Justin Jefferson went for 223 last week. TJ Hawkinson had a good game in his revenge game. I think with the way the Lions aren't great against tight ends, it could be a game for Tyler Conklin, who's kind of struggled. And, of course, the defense for the Jets. Sauce Gardner against Amon-Ra or against Jamison Williams. I think this is a spot where I would expect the Jets to come out in a slight edge and pull this one out. This is a huge game for both teams. The winner really cements themselves in the playoff picture, while the loser, they have a hill to climb, and a steep one at that.
Yeah, this is an elimination game, I think, for both teams. Not that 7-7 is a death sentence for the Jets, because you could win 3 games in a row to win out, but with their schedule, I don't think it's likely.
What's their schedule?
Let's look. They play Miami the final game of the season. I forgot which games are in order. Okay, so it's the Jaguars next week, and then at Seattle, at Miami to end the season, right? So those are 2 tough road games with the way Seattle's played at home this year, even though they gave up that game to the Raiders that you hated, and with the way Miami's playing, even though they looked iffy on Sunday night and the Chargers lost. Those are 2 very difficult road games. So my 2 last points, Garrett Wilson is the truth. He's awesome. He's going to have over 1,000 yards, most receiving yards for a Jets rookie, more than Keyshawn Johnson, who was pretty good. And you mentioned it briefly, Jamison Williams. I don't expect him to have a 41-yard touchdown every week on his first NFL catch, nonetheless. He's awesome.
Yeah.
But DeAndre Swift, Armon St. Brown, Jamison Williams now, DJ Chark, Josh Reynolds, who's been involved in the offense most of the year. Sauce Gardner has been very, very good, but it seems like this Lions team definitely has a couple of different options for ways that they can beat you. Not that they're like the best offense in football, but there's enough here that I think they'll be able to move the ball on the Jets, even with their good defense, even in the cold.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I could see the Lions getting to like 20, 21 points in this one, but I think we don't know who the quarterback is, right? But Mike White, I think Joe Flacco could actually have some momentum here. If Bam Knight is playing up to the level that we've seen, because quite frankly, man, it's just you don't have to do too much in this Jets offense as a quarterback. Don't make mistakes. Keep the chains alive. Like there's enough talent here, and I think the Jets should probably get to about 25, 26 points in this one.
Yeah, I was going to say I see 27-20, 27-23, kind of a game in like the mid-20s. So
yeah, so that's one pivotal game, but another pivotal game here that's going to possibly decide two division winners or wild card, implications. Cincinnati Bengals giving 3.5 at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs just got their asses beat in San Francisco. Not a surprise. Cincinnati's starting to heat up now. Do you think they have what it takes to not only beat the Bucs, but actually catch the Ravens in the AFC North?
Do you know what this game reminds me of? It reminds me of the Dallas-Minnesota game where we were so sure. We were like, how was Dallas the favorite, right? And then Dallas goes out and mollywops, just smacked them. Like absolutely.
Same thing with the Niners last week. Same line and everything.
So I'm thinking to myself, right, like, okay, the Bucs, they got mollywopped last week against the 49ers and Brock Purdy, right? They looked atrocious. Mike Evans killed me. I started so well in fantasy.
Killed me too, but he had a 60-yard touchdown call back.
It's unbelievable. It's truly, truly unbelievable. The head says in this game, like, the Bucs are going to bounce back. They're 6-7. The NFC, they're probably going to finish either 9-8 and 8-9 and win the division anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But the head says, like, okay, the Bucs are going to bounce back, blah, 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 blah. Screw that. I'm laying the 3.5 with the Bengals because the Bucs offense has been stinky for a while, and Joe Burrow is rolling. A lot of people liked the Browns last week in that spot against the Bengals, as did you. And Nick Chubb kind of got shut down, and that was kind of a letdown spot for the Bengals. Like teams who aren't good or aren't as good as you think they are usually lose games in that type of situation, and they didn't. It was business as usual. So I'm going to treat this Bengals team like it's business as usual. They finally figured it out. They're 9-4. They're fighting with the Ravens on top of the AFC North. Joe Burrow's got it going. He's got Jamar Chase back healthy. There are more ways for the Bengals to beat the Bucs. Bucs have a couple of question marks on defense. So guess what? I'm not going to get fooled. I'm going to take the Bengals laying the 3.5.
I stopped betting games that involve Tampa Bay Bucs since probably week 3, but I've been on the right side most of the time with them since that. And, I was like, I still believed in the Niners because people were like, oh, well, Jimmy Garoppolo's this, Brock Purdy. Bro, anybody that watches the Niners knows that it's all in the system. And Jimmy Garoppolo, they act like you're replacing Mahomes. You're not. So that wasn't surprising. Now you're going up against the Bengals defense who's gotten hot. They've gotten hot recently. Their run game is kind of at the moment. It's not that impressive, but you're adding P. Ryan out of the backfield who's making plays in the receiving game. Jamar Chase, who knows with T. Higgins, though? I want to keep an eye on what's going on with T. Higgins, but I still think Cincinnati has enough here to get it done. They're red hot right now, and Tampa Bay's in such a funk. And everyone's like, oh, they're going to figure it out. Maybe they do, but I don't know about that. Look how they're playing. They have no chemistry. Nothing is going right. And I just don't know if we see it getting fixed right now. I really don't. I got to be honest. Tom Brady looks like he's kind of checked out, like he doesn't want to even be there anymore. Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers look like they both want out in a different situation. So I'm going to go with Cincinnati. I think they're going to make the late push, and they're going to get that AFC North spot. I think they're going to wrest it away from the Ravens. That's a big Week 18 game. I think they need to win this game. And I think, I do have the Panthers winning the division, in a bet. So I'm hoping Tampa Bay loses. And, they caught a break next week, of course, when they have to face Kyler Murray. They get to face Colt McCoy now. The The Panthers, that's the big game there, and then the Falcons. So, I realistically could see Tampa Bay losing at least two of the next four, and that's what I'm hoping for. So, I think we go Cincinnati here, and people I feel like are surprised, but this to me is the move here. So, Joe, let's wrap up the last game here. We got the Tennessee Titans at the Los Angeles Chargers, -3. Chargers in a big spot here against a Titans team that we don't really know what we're seeing from. They have a lot of problems at the moment. Do you think they get back, they get right, and Henry has a huge day against a bad Chargers run defense?
I was going to say, this is the teaser spot of the week because you tease the Titans up and you hope for a one-score game, which I think is exactly what's going to happen, and you're 100% right. This is the get-right game for Derrick Henry. He's going to be able to rush on this Chargers defense. He's probably going to rush for close to, if not over 100 yards. I think the Titans, this game, they'll play keep away. This is the kind of game where it's like the sexy fantasy guy, Justin Herbert, against the boring, bland, nobody likes guy in Ryan Tannehill. But I see the Titans, who have struggled the last couple of weeks. Last week, they didn't get embarrassed, right? But I don't think anybody saw that game coming against the Jaguars. And the Jaguars have been kind of up and down. But the Titans have lost 3 straight games. I think, well, I wouldn't say they're good. I still think they're like slightly better than 7-6. I don't know. It kind of feels off to me. I just can't see them. I think the money line here for the Titans is also a good spot because you could also say to yourself, like, are the Titans really going to lose 4 in a row? But yeah, I'd like this is the spot where you tease the Titans up. So I'm gonna take the Titans with the 3, and like I said, if you want to buy the 0.5 point too, not a bad idea. Kind of cover yourself a little bit. If you want to take the Titans money line, I think this is the dog spot to do it with. What do you think?
I'm done on the Titans. I'm done on the Titans. I mean, even though it's a great matchup for Derrick Henry to get loose against a horrible running defense, dude, their whole team looks bad. It looks bad. I think I would prefer to go with the Chargers, Justin Herbert, laying the 3 at home. They're playing for a playoff spot. They're a team that really needs to continue to keep stringing wins together. You got teams like the Jets, you got the Dolphins, you got the Patriots, you got these guys that are just kind of hanging around. And LA needs to separate themselves. And I think it's not a gimme or a layup by any chance, but this is something that it's a very winnable game, and it would be a shame for them to not win this. And they played pretty well against the Miami Dolphins team last week. If it wasn't for the flukiest, weird fumble recovery touchdown for Tyreek
Hill,
this game is probably not even near as close as it looked like. So I'm going to go with the Chargers here, and I'm going to hold my nose because I do think they are the better team, and I think I'm going to back the much better quarterback in Justin Herbert over Ryan Tannehill.
That's fair.
So, Joe, I got to give up my Gambling Guineas best betting trend. You love the Gambling Guineas best betting trend. Oh, I like the Jets -1. We alluded to it earlier, or +1, I should say. We alluded to it earlier. I think the Jets have hit a little bit of a slide. They're losing 1-score games, and Robert Saleh's got this team prepared better than that. And I think the home versus road splits really speak for themselves. The Jets have a great defense, and I think they're going to be able to get to Jared Goff. Hoping Sauce Gardner comes away with an interception this one. Put his stamp on that defensive rookie of the year, something that I'm heavily involved in as well. So let's go New York. Let's get in the playoffs. Let's get Robert Saleh, that coach of the year too. Really need it. We have our emerging player of the night brought to you by Emerge Sports Group. Joe, why don't you take it away?
So last week, Jalen Hurts, I think, definitively put himself in like that favorite number 1 spot in the MVP race. Had almost 300 total yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground against the Giants. The Eagles came out, went up 21-0 very quickly, and looked really, really, really good. And we're waiting for the other shoe to drop with the Eagles, and it hasn't happened yet. And they raced out to 12-1. And we both know that unless your name is Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, those MVP voters, they tend to love those dual threat guys now, right? So I think Jalen Hurts finally, or firmly rather, put himself in the driver's seat right now for the MVP. I think if he just holds steady for the rest of the season, I think he could hold off Pat Mahomes and Joe Burrow, but still got a lot of football left to play. We got a month left.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And, anything additional that you're looking for this week? I know you had some other plays and games that you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, so one of the craziest game endings of the year was that Buffalo Bills Miami Dolphins game, all the way back in week 3, I think it was, right? So this is a Saturday game, which we didn't touch on, right? But from what I'm seeing, the Bills are 7.5 at home against the Dolphins, right? So 2 factors here. Number one, the Dolphins, you're right, looked crappy on Sunday Night Football outside of that fluky Tyreek Hill fumble that went for a touchdown from midfield. And a lot of the books here are expecting the Bills to basically have their revenge game. And I happen to think they're right because I don't trust this Dolphins team in a cold weather atmosphere yet. I think last week, psych-wise, to lose the game the way they did against the Chargers speaks volumes. I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that Tua is not great. He's solid, though. I think he's solid, but I think he's closer to average solid, right? So I trust that Bills team that has played in some iffy weather games this year already, in cold weather games. I think they're going to make right on that earlier fluky game that they couldn't edge out in Miami. And another game that I know you're going to love when I say this, the Patriots beat the Cardinals on Monday night, right? What would it be without a Johnny V episode to not mention the Cardinals, right? If you took the Cardinals on Monday night, you're a schmuck. How are you going to bet Cliff Kingsbury against Bill Belichick? You're stupid. You're an idiot. You're dumb.
But hold on. I don't line those metrics up and that thought process. Bro, Kyler Murray got hurt on what, the 3rd play? That changes everything.
Yeah, but
what do you mean?
I don't know if it was going to change the outcome of the game.
What do you mean?
The Cardinals look very, very iffy.
Dude, the Cardinals were in that game. It was a fumble recovery touchdown that turned the whole thing. Weren't the Cardinals up or tied at halftime? I'll be honest.
It was 13-13.
Yeah, and then didn't they take a lead?
I don't remember if they
took a lead. No, they lost 27-13. They were up, and then the Patriots tied it up before half.
Right, and then the Patriots scored 2 touchdowns.
Touchdown changed the whole complexion of the game and made it seem like a blowout.
Well, it wasn't a blowout, but it was a typical Patriots type of win for Bill Belichick, right? And I'm looking at this week, and I'm thinking to myself, the Patriots stay on the west side of the country to play the Raiders. The Raiders, who choked up a 13-point lead to the Rams on Thursday Night Football, your Rams, buddy, and look terrible. They've blown a lot of games this year. How is this line only 1? How is this game? I'm seeing a pick'em on Caesars. That's ridiculous. Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick. Josh McDaniels, we know, is a stinky head coach, maybe the worst of all of the Belichick disciples. You got to grab the Patriots here, no? Especially money line. I mean, come on. They're really going to make the same mistake 2 times in a row with Belichick? And again, I'm a Jets fan, so it's like watching the guy win all those Super Bowls, but I got to kiss the rings and I got to respect him, right? I'm not backing a Josh McDaniels team against Bill Belichick. That's ridiculous. How is this line only 1?
Maybe they'll do us a favor and the Raiders will beat the Patriots. That way it kind of knocks them down a notch on this playoff run here, because the Jets lost both of them and do not have the tiebreaker over New England. So that is not good.
No, it's not.
Well, a lot remains to be seen. There's a couple key games this week, so maybe a few things will go in our favor. But, Joe, always appreciate it. Pleasure talking with you. And don't forget, follow us on Twitter. I'm @_JohnnyVTV. He's at JCalabrese1. Everybody have a great week. Go win some money and get ready for this holiday season. We're going to have a lot more stuff for the rest of the year. Ciao.